Okay, so the class is being recorded. This is me again, Dr. Sam Hamid Al-Jalil, and this is AA100A. We're doing a new chapter, and the chapter that we have this time around is Cezanne, on Cezanne, and Cezanne happens to be a French painter from the 19th century. Again, you will have to look at the reason why we're featuring Cezanne and not somebody else, perhaps from also, the list of French painters. Again, you would need to always tie or connect the choice to the title of the book. The title of the book is Reputations. So the choice of the character or the featured character has to do with the title and with the content and the theme that cuts across the book. The theme that cuts across the book is, of course, reputations. And reputations, like we said, in good and bad, contested and challenged reputations. We have done that with Cleopatra, and then we moved to Marlowe, Christopher Marlowe, and now we're doing the same thing with Cezanne. Again, it's the idea of contested reputation. It's the idea that people are divided over or polarized over a character. Or a figure, whether this figure is artistic, literary, or historical. So the ideas that we have set at the beginning of the course in the book will be also reflected in Cezanne. So again, the idea of having or embracing non-orthodox beliefs, non-orthodox, ideas, ideas that do not normally conform with what is being practiced in society. Whether we're talking on the historical level, whether we're talking on the political level, artistic, or literary. We have seen that, if you still remember last time, with Christopher Marlowe, and we said that Christopher Marlowe had or embraced non-conformist ideas when it comes to politics, when it comes to religion, and for all the beauty of his literary talent, the fact that he was one of a kind when it comes to drama and poetry, people couldn't ignore the fact that he has ideas that do not conform to the prevailing ideas of society. So we have seen that again with Christopher Marlowe, and we're going to see that happening also with Cezanne. The fact that he is also unique in how he practices his profession as a painter, and this is what we'll talk about. He will be representing a new chapter in the history of French and European painting. He will be always referred to as a modern painter, with the associations of the word modern. Modern means that you, as a painter, is perhaps different in the way you choose your themes, in the way you also choose to express these themes. And this is happening again, like I said, with Cezanne. He will be representing modernity, as opposed to tradition. So people before Cezanne used to paint in a certain way, but when Cezanne came over, he started a new school of painting. Sometimes he deals with themes and ideas that are old, but he and the school that he has started manipulate the material, manipulate the theme so that they can bring in something fresh and something new. So this is what we'll be talking about today, inshallah, today and also next time. Because Cezanne is going to stay with us for at least 2 classes. So before I also start, I would like to scout for talent. I would like to check whether we have artistic talents here, whether we have people who paint, who catch themselves painting. You paint? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I actually paint with oil, and I also draw with charcoal.
So you draw and
Yeah.
paint. That's interesting. Shamsa, right? So what kind of painting
Yes.
do you do? I mean, you draw portraits of people, landscape. What kind of painting are you into or in?
For me, since I started with charcoal, I usually go for portraits.
Portraits, yeah. Okay, nice. I mean, you normally portray or paint familiar people, people, I
Yeah.
mean, family members, friends, or what?
Uh, yeah, I alternate between canvas and paper.
Okay. So I'm talking about the subjects of your paintings. Are they people that are dear and near to your heart, familiar people, or people that you sometimes encounter in the street and they leave an impression on you, and the next thing you know is that you're painting them.
They're all living in my head.
Okay, that's it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, that's good. And now do you have? Let me ask you this technical question. But
Yeah.
now, I'm not a painter. I don't paint and I don't draw even. When you paint from memory, or you have to have the person in front of you?
No, I don't have to have something in front of me. It's
Hmm.
usually all from my head.
Ah, that's interesting. Yes. Okay.
I can't. Yeah, so I kind of imagine whatever in front of me, and I started drawing.
Hmm. Okay. Let me ask you, perhaps. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure you have your circle of painters, people who are like-minded and stuff. Do people? I mean, the other painters, do they also paint from memory, or they have to have people in front? For the most part.
For the most part, I encountered a lot of artists, and I took a few courses with. I don't know if anybody knows her, Amani Revere. She's a charcoal artist.
Mhm.
For me, it depends on the person, but for the most I've seen, they all um draw from their heads.
Okay, that's interesting. Okay, can we have somebody else? I mean, if you have the talent, can you come to the mic and share your experience with us? Remember that the class is perhaps 100 people, and at least 60 are in attendance as we speak. So I'm sure that we have talents. I'm not going to push it hard. I mean,
Hello,
sometimes people
doctor.
have the
Can you hear me?
talent. Yes. What's your name?
Without.
With that, yeah. Go ahead, you with that.
I've personally opened galleries and sold a lot of my paintings, so I kind
Nice.
of know my stuff about painting, yeah.
That's
But I
interesting.
don't really understand what you want me to say.
I just want you to share your experience. I mean, first of all, we have now established the fact that we have talents in class. You and Shamsa, and I'm sure a lot more, right? So my question to Shamsa was about what kind of painting she's into, whether portraits, whether history, whether still life paintings. What kind of paintings?
Well, I personally use oil painting, and I kind of go for a gothic theme as much as I
Mm.
can. But I would also like do landscapes of castles, maybe that type of
Um,
scenery.
yeah, deserted and abandoned castles. If you're talking
No,
about that,
actually, when I do castles, I make it a
yes.
full life city. Like I would go all out, but it's either gothic or
Mm.
complete life. I don't have an in
Uh,
between.
yes,
But
very extreme.
yeah, it depends on the type of painting I'm doing.
Yeah.
Like if I'm using
Okay.
sketches or oil, yeah.
Oh, that's interesting too. Again, you will have to go to the castle and have it portrayed, or you can paint it from memory. My
Well,
question to
I
Shamsa.
can do both. I can do
Mm,
both, but it would be a lot easier if I can look at the picture. But
mhm,
yeah, if I have a rough idea, I can just fill in the gaps by myself. It comes with
mm.
experience, I guess.
So painting for you is what? Is a diversion. Sometimes you try to fly away and fly away from the here and the now by painting, or is it
No, I
a
can still
hobby
put
or
it
what?
as it's art. It's just art of life, I guess. I don't know what other word to describe other than it's art. It's just beautiful as it is, whatever it is.
Mm, that's
It's
interesting.
more than a hobby.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sometimes it can be a diversion. Somebody is trying to escape away from the miserable here and miserable now and go to the, yeah, sometimes it
As
can be nice.
القوقعة, that's kind of what zone I'm in when I'm painting, if
Mhm.
that's what you mean.
No, I mean, it's about flying and going away and leaving everything behind, the cares and the worries, the exams, Dr.
Yeah.
Samih.
Your kids, running away from your
Yeah,
kids, that's
yeah,
basically
yeah,
like,
sometimes, yes. I don't have the talent. Okay. Right, that's interesting to know. Yeah,
Actually, Dr.
yeah. Go ahead. Somebody's saying something.
I actually drew it yesterday on my iPad because of your exam.
You mean you were trying to kind of avoid the
No,
fears or?
when I finished the exam, I was very nervous and I started
Ah,
drawing out of
ah,
nowhere.
Okay. What kind of exam was it?
Your exam.
My exam?
It was yesterday. Yeah.
No, I don't know. Was it yesterday? And was it that difficult or bad? I don't believe so. I mean the
No,
question. Ah,
no.
right.
To be honest, for me, um, the questions that came for me was
Mm.
kind of difficult. Kind of, not a lot. Kind of.
No, I wouldn't call them difficult. I would say that they perhaps need some thinking, some reflection.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm, okay. So, and what was your score out of six? It was out of six, right? So, how much did you score?
I don't
Two?
want to say.
Okay.
No,
طيب.
actually, three. خلاص.
آه. لا يعني you still have time يعني المستقبل يعني is ahead of you. You still have like five more
I
five
hope
more
so. I hope
quizzes.
so. Inshallah.
Inshallah, you'll make. I'm sure يعني the coming quizzes are going to be as perhaps it takes some preparation. You do what you're supposed to do and hope for the best. Inshallah.
Inshallah.
But can we have other people? People, of course, who paint, who catch themselves painting. Sometimes it's a hobby, it's a profession, right?
Assalamu alaikum.
عليكم السلام ورحمة الله. أهلا وسهلا.
My name is Bashair Abdullah.
Bashair, yeah, Bashair, go
Yeah.
ahead.
I play on piano sometimes and
That's
guitar and another
mm-hmm.
kind of
Mm-hmm.
something called ukulele. and I start to play on harmonica because I'm interested about music. But honestly, I'm not professional.
You're not a professional musician. This is what you're trying to say?
Yeah,
No.
but I still يعني develop my
Yeah,
skills.
that's you don't have to be a professional musician. Sometimes being a professional is puts a lot of limitations on the individual, especially if it can be if you make it a career and you expect to generate income and all these kinds of things. So if you approach it as a hobby, sometimes um, you know. Uh, it gets you where you want in terms of
Yes, doctor.
self fulfillment and
Doctor.
yes, yes.
My name is Muna. Muna.
I
I want to.
am
You talk about what's about my passion. You mean?
your passion. I don't know
Yeah.
what your passion is. Is it painting or music or what?
My passion or my favorite things or my hobbies. All time. I think all the books. My friends, like my friends, really. So if you search in
Your
my
your
book,
your your friends or your family?
like my family,
Oh,
really like my family, because I
okay.
maybe from when I was young till now I have more books in my room, but
Nice.
still yes, still I didn't have a library for all of my books because maybe I have above 1,000, I think.
MashaAllah. Did you read all of them?
When I read something, I lost my soul. I lost myself with
You mean
books.
if you,
Forget
well,
my
yeah.
son and yeah, my
MashaAllah.
husband. Yes.
Mm. You're يعني are you do we have another Faustus in class? But minus of course the vaulting ambition and all this bad stuff, the bad things that he did. So you're into reading that much? You like what kind of reading do you do?
I read everything, but
Read
I loved I loved novel.
novels, mashallah.
Yes,
Mhm.
the, everything about information or scientifics or statics about something is important, like COVID-19 or something in
Mhm.
the world.
But you don't write, right? You don't write. You only read.
From maybe 5 years, last 5 years ago, I write two books, but I can't publish
You
them.
can publish them.
Yeah,
Why is it because of how sensitive the topics are? Well, you don't
no,
you're
really,
looking for a publisher.
I didn't this يعني the way or the path for publishing.
You're looking
I,
for a publisher
yeah,
basically, right?
I need to ask about this path
Mhm.
or how I can
Yeah,
publish.
yeah, we can have a workshop on that. Remember, we're doing lots of workshops in the English department, and
Yeah,
we can even ask a publisher to come over and tell us about the process. If somebody has a book and he or she wants to publish it, they can always give us tips as how we can do that. Thank you, Mona, so much.
thank you.
So I don't want. This is very interesting, and it seems that we have so many talents, and unfortunately, we don't have the time for all of them now. Perhaps over time we can.
Doctor,
Yes, yes.
I'm sorry. My name is Sima.
Yeah, Fima, go ahead.
I think we need a places that treat us to know what is our hobbies, what is our
Mm.
passions,
Yeah,
and
that's interesting.
maybe here in Saudi Arabia there is no places like this. Maybe just only for the kids are 5 years, 6 years. But I think we need to have these places for the young for the young people also.
I mean, places where you can exercise or practice the hobby that you have. Shamsa said that there is a place, right? Right here, Shamsa. It depends on where you are. I mean, if you're in Jeddah, I think there will be.
Yeah, that's
Yes,
right.
there
Maybe
is,
here
yeah.
there's new places, but only
Yes.
these 2 years they.
Sometimes we don't look. Sometimes it's there are lots of places, but perhaps we don't do our own homework. We don't do enough research.
Yeah,
Um,
it's kind of hidden. You have to look for it, either
yeah.
online or ask about somebody.
Yes. Okay. Very, like I said, I'm very delighted that we're scouting, that now we're discovering lots of talents, and I'm sure we can have something on that. We can arrange something where we can talk more about it. Now, if you allow me, I will have to go to the book and we will have to start the chapter. So let me share. Okay. So I'm sharing my screen now. Can you see that?
Not
No.
this.
Not yet?
No.
No. Okay. Hmm. Can you see that now?
No, it doesn't show.
No.
It's very strange. Not. Okay. What's wrong? Stop sharing first. Hmm. Now
No, nothing.
it's very strange. I mean, because I can, yeah, it's being shared. Cezanne, can't you see that?
No, your picture is freeze right now.
It's freezing.
Yeah.
Is it still freezing?
Yeah, I even got out and came back again. And there's still nothing.
Obviously, something is wrong. Um, yeah, it took me 5 minutes to enter the room. I never enter. I mean, I normally enter on time. It took me 5 minutes to drive. Obviously, it's very busy, but we'll somehow try to make the best of a bad job. Now, I think you can see now.
Yes.
Yes, right? Cezanne? Cezanne, everyone? Can you see that?
Yes, we can.
Okay,
It's
good.
clear now.
Okay. So as I was saying, we're doing Cezanne today, and Cezanne is a painter. So at one point we did a historical figure, a ruler or a governor, Cleopatra. At another time we did a literary figure, a playwright, and this time around we're doing a painter. This is very interesting because it introduces you to different genres and to different branches of knowledge and stuff. So Cezanne that we're having is French and he belongs to the 19th century. And when I say a painter, so we talk about, painting, we talk about artistic appreciation, we talk about galleries, we talk about different schools of painting, different styles of painting, and a great deal more. So if you look at there is, I'm not sure if you can see, there is a picture. It's not very clear, and perhaps this is meant, right? So can you see the picture? So you have
Yes.
Charles Harrison, and then under him, you have,
Charcoal.
what do you think? This is one painting or a number of paintings? What do you think?
Looks like one, but
It
I don't
looks
know.
like one. Yeah. What do you think? Do you think this is one single painting or a collection of paintings?
I think it's one.
One. You think
It
you
looks like
okay.
someone is looking at something or escaping from the fire on the
Yeah.
other side, but I'm not
Okay. Okay.
also
Good.
sure.
Right. How clear is the painting? Is it clear?
I think it represents the confusion, maybe.
Yeah. These are different, very beautiful interpretations. Okay. But I'm not talking about the interpretation of the painting, at least not now. What I'm focusing on is perhaps people who paint would relate. I would like you to tell me whether this kind of painting is familiar or not. Whether this is how people normally paint, or this is perhaps different, and if it's different in one way.
I think they call it still life kind of painting.
Yeah, and this is an as. That's why I'm saying that it can be a collection of snapshots or paintings, where on one side you have this style of painting that we call still life. Uh, in another, we may have what we call nude. On a third level, you would have a different style or a different type of paint. So again, I'm talking now about how clear the painting is, how easy to
I
see
think
and
It's a
perceive.
bit blurry.
Yeah, very good. It's a bit blurry, like what's your name?
Mona Muhammad.
Like Mona is saying. Is it my question is whether this is meant, this is designed by the painter, or this is how people paint? Is it meant by the painter? Do we have painters who manipulate the material in such a way that you don't understand a lot of things?
He meant to be like.
can I talk, Doctor?
Yes, go ahead.
This is actually one painting.
Mhm.
This whole scene. It's I think it's called Modern Olympia.
Okay.
I kind of forgot. Um, so what the idea of this painting actually according to what I hear, it's like he's looking into a dream or something, because the black figure you guys see is actually a man.
Yeah.
Okay, and his resting his head on his hand, and the missing part of the painting, there is like a beige part on the top. This is actually the figure of an angel on a cloud.
Okay, right. That's interesting. Again, so we're coming up with different interpretations, and obviously the interpretation is up for grabs here. Are all pain, my other, can you mute your mic, لو سمحتي? My question is about whether paintings should be like that, up for grabs, different interpretations, or sometimes they are very straightforward, and we can all agree on what they mean. This is my question.
I know he was the
Should
first impressionist to do that. He was the one who made that bridge into impression art.
yeah, perhaps I don't know how to
He wasn't trying to make it obvious. He just wanted each person to interpret it as they want.
Mhm. And what I'm trying to say with that, whether this is a trend, a new one, or does this apply to all
No,
painters?
like this is
There
what I meant.
is,
He was the first one to do this type of art.
but let's talk about your
Oh,
paintings.
well.
Are or do your paintings lend themselves to easy interpretation? I can almost tell what your
Yes.
thoughts were when I see your paintings. They are not as blurry, they are not as confusing.
Yes.
Okay, that's good. I don't know whether this is good or bad, obviously, right?
Each
Uh,
person.
because it's a matter of taste, right?
Exactly.
So, yeah, okay, that's
Maybe you were trying to do something untraditional or extraordinary thing.
Why do you insist that it's a he, not a she?
Yeah,
No, we don't know who the painter is, at least for now, right?
oh, because
Right?
I have heard about him.
Yes, and sometimes knowing about something spoils the pleasure of it. This is what I'm trying to say. Yeah, and I'm trying to kind of draw you to conclusions that you come up with, fresh conclusions, not the conclusions of the book. Okay, anyway, so we'll talk about all these things. Cezanne and how renowned he was. And we'll see. I mean, Cezanne is also interesting in terms of his artistic philosophy and how he sees painting and its function and all this kind of stuff. And then, of course, we cannot talk about painting unless and until we talk about some of its techniques. And the people who paint here can always help us. I'm not a painter myself, so we might need the help of Widad and Shamsa and our other colleagues when it comes to the techniques of art and some of the terms that they use. And then we will talk about tradition and modernity, and we're going to pit them obviously against each other. We'll look at how people used to paint, and when Cezanne and the other Impressionists came over, how they looked at painting and whether they have effected any changes or not. And then we'll get to know some of the established painting traditions, and one of them happens to be the nude, which was a kind of painting that was widespread, I think, in Italy, and then it took over, the rest of Europe. We'll talk about the nude, the traditional nude, and we'll talk about the modern nude. When I say modern, I'm talking about Cezanne and his colleagues, and see whether they would add to the tradition or deviate from the tradition. We'll talk about Cezanne as the artist. The artist means that he was a favorite among the artists. We'll see how and why. And we'll talk about another artistic tradition, which is painting the landscape, and we'll also see how similar or different Cezanne was. And then another type, talking about pure things and how they are depicted, and then still life and the value of still life and what still life, the still life style of painting, what it stands for and its significance. And then we are going to conclude the chapter with this idea of scholars and owners, and we'll talk about the French political scene and how the revolutions, social and otherwise, that were taking place at the time, how they affected and influenced the taste of people. We're going to talk about new social classes coming to the scene and dominating it, and whether this is going to affect art and how people look at art or not. So it's an interesting chapter. Okay, like always, we need not to lose sight of the fact that this is only material that can help us, develop English major skills. Again, it's about analyzing. It's about having an opinion that you can express and communicate in an essay, developing an argument, and going about defending it. So the aims of the chapter would be to introduce you to the work of the French artist Paul Cézanne and encourage you to consider the reasons for his reputation again. Provide some general introduction to the art of painting. This is not a fine arts class, if you like. This is English major courses, and you would also excuse me and any other teacher for that matter if we're not into painting that much. We may be saying stuff that you find perhaps funny because of the lack of experience when it comes to painting, of course. But I'm sure you would give us the benefit of the doubt. Well, consider, can somebody, can you mute your mic, Malish? Encourage you will, the chapter is supposed to encourage you to consider relevant principles of composition and will help you eventually to discover meaning and value in the relationships between works of different kinds. Okay, so Cezanne, everyone, that we're doing. So Paul Cezanne, like I said, French, and he used to live between 1839 and 1906. So this is the 19th century and the early 20th century. This is the time when there was a great deal of social mobility and in not only in France but across Europe. And this is the time when there was social revolutions and people starting to kind of claim what they think were the rights. They started politically, and they changed, political regimes and royal families, and but they never stopped there. The revolution would, kind of cover all the aspects of life, and one of them happens to be, of course, art. So the ideas that we used to have in the 18th century are going to be either modified or perhaps they have to give way to new ideas, new revolutionary ideas. Whatever we may have accepted in the 18th century is no longer there. People have fresh outlooks. They look at life with different, lenses. They look at life with fresh perspectives. And there was a revolution of a sort. Like I said, it started with politics, but it never ended there. You have social revolutions, you also have literary and artistic revolutions, and this was the time when Cezanne was born, and this is the time when he was raised, and when he left. Again, it's only natural that we will see a different artist, an artist that is affected and influenced by whatever happens in society, and whatever happened in society at the time was not little. We're talking about social and political and artistic revolutions. Um,
Sorry, doctor.
yes,
There is an echo.
where?
I don't know. Someone is opening his mic.
Can you kindly mute your mic? Whoever is having her mic on, can you mute your mic لو سمحتي أو لو سمحت? Do you still have the echo? I
Right
don't.
now, no.
No, alhamdulillah, good. Okay. So again, we're talking about Cezanne, and when the name is dropped, when Cezanne's name is mentioned, there is a great deal of associations. Not least of them would be the idea of artistic revolution, the fact that he took the artistic scene by storm. How would he do that? Of course, if he's an only painter, if he was just another painter, we wouldn't even have featured him in the book. The reason why he's being featured in the book, because he came out with something monumental and something big. What is this big thing that he came out with? It's the idea of revolutionizing art. He wasn't happy with the way art is practiced. He wasn't happy with how people paint. He wasn't happy with the rules and regulations and the guidelines, and he started to chart his own way, and lots of people are going to follow him. Of course, when you start something new, people start to, cast, uneasy looks at you. I mean, they might think that you're crazy. They might think that you are perhaps arrogant. You don't want to follow tradition, and you're not an easy guy to deal with. But over time, because of how fresh and how original your ideas are, you come to your own or into your own. People start to appreciate the new ideas that you have started and that you have spoken. This is exactly what happened with Cezanne. This is exactly what happened with Christopher Marlowe, if you still remember. It took Christopher Marlowe, I mean, years and years and centuries in order to come into his own and become recognized as a great talent. Remember, he was born in the 17th century, right? And he came into his own and got recognized in the 19th century. With Cezanne, it's not going to take centuries, but it's going to take years. For him to get recognized as a great talent. Okay. So we need to also remember that Cezanne was part of a school of painting that started at the time, and its name was the Impressionists, or the Impressionism. And Impressionism, as even the term indicates or suggests, is about the impression that you're trying to have your reader. If Impressionism is also in literature, you have Impressionism in literature, in painting, and so whenever you have a receiver or an appreciator of your art, you're trying to create a certain impression And this impression can be very fleeting, can be short-lived, but it is an impression afterwards. We'll talk more about Impressionism. So what I'm trying to say here is that Cezanne was part of this school. It is he and other people who started this school, and they started it when they got rejected by the Salon. The Salon is, a group. It's more or less like an association or an organization that is responsible for organizing galleries and art conventions annually every year. So people would, of course, they don't join the convention um, or the conference, if I can call it a conference, easily. You have to apply, and then they would look at your paintings and see whether it falls within the parameters that they set or not. If your painting is following the guidelines that they set, you get accepted into the the annual salon. But if you don't accept it, you don't have a chance, and perhaps you need to think of another profession. You should leave art and painting and do something else. So the salon or the annual salon was very important for painters. You cannot go about claiming that you are a painter unless and until you get recognized by the salon. So with Cezanne, Cezanne, of course, is not. The salon is, like I said, it's annual, and it takes place in Paris. So if you are from out of town, you will have to come and attend the salon. So can you attend? Do you have a free pass? Is it easy, and is it for everyone? Of course not. You'll have to apply, and you have to send them samples of your work, and they will decide whether you're fit for the salon or not. Obviously, Cezanne, who was from the south, he had to come over from the south of France, and he would apply. They would look at his paintings and they would say, no, you're not following our guidelines. Okay, so he goes and then comes back perhaps the next year, and the same thing happens. It took him like 20 years to get accepted. Every time he tries, he gets rejected. So why doesn't he change? That you should be asking this question, Cezanne. If people, if you're trying to apply for a place in a university, and every perhaps every year you apply and they say no, you're not following. So what is it that you're going to do? You're going to change yourself. You're going to perhaps study more. You would ask other people about what it is that they want, and then you try your luck the next year and you get accepted. With Cezanne, it took so long because not because he was stupid, not because he was not listening. It's simply because he didn't believe in the guidelines of the salon. He thought that the way they paint is not perhaps the best of all possible ways. He believes that painting should be different. So he was not following the guidelines, and it is because of this that he got rejected a number of times. After a long time, after long years, he will be accepted, and you would ask, was he accepted because was he accepted because he changed, because he started to follow the guidelines, or what? Did he change? No, he didn't change. Actually, it is the salon and the guidelines of the salons that got changed. So obviously, the salon, like everything else in France and in Europe at the time, was experiencing a lot of changes. And these changes were taking place because of the revolutions that I was telling you about. You can have a social revolution and you can have a political revolution, and you don't expect art and literature to get influenced and get affected. So art got affected, and people started to show acceptance and approval of things that they wouldn't accept in other times. So again, the saloon and its rules and regulations are going to be tweaked a little bit uh, um, as a result of the what was happening at the time in terms of the revolution in taste and the revolution in politics. And the next thing you know is that Cezanne got accepted. So what happened when Cezanne got refused and rejected? Because again, he was painting in a different way, a way different from the way people paint in the salon. What happened? It wasn't only him that got rejected a number of times. Actually, it was him and other people. Those rejectees, if you like, those who got rejected, started to come together and they formed a school, and it was later named or called Impressionism, or they were called the Impressionists. And the common idea with them and about them would be that none of them follows the rules and the regulations of the salon. So this was the binding thread among them. They are agreed on the refusal and rejection of the guidelines of the salon. Again, they are going to stay together as a school for some time. But somehow, because of his rebellious nature, because of the fact that he doesn't settle, for a long time, Cezanne is going to even reject the guidelines of the impressions, and he's going to think that the rules that they are now imposing are not what he had or has in mind. So he would even go against them and start his own way. So as you can see, Cezanne is more or less like a Marlowe, more or less a maverick, somebody who wouldn't settle for easy formulas. He wouldn't take an artistic formula as is and apply it to his paintings. He might be dealing with old themes, traditional themes, but he would have his own touch. He would approach the material, he would approach the theme and the ideas in a quite fresh way. Again, when he started off, he wouldn't be appreciated, which is typical of new ideas. But over time, like I said, people will start to appreciate what he stands for. An interesting, illustration of what we're saying would be the fact that one of his paintings in 1999 was sold for 60 million, dollars. Can you imagine? Did you hear the number correctly? 60 million. And when you look at the painting, you wouldn't think that it should have been sold at that. I mean, the number is obviously exaggerated. The price is very exaggerated. Again, this is the same Cezanne that got rejected at the start of his life. Can you imagine? So was it the artistic value of the painting, or was it the name Cezanne? Now that he is, or that he has become a big name in the world of painting, his you wouldn't ask about the value of what he painted. You would ask about the name. So again, this is very ironic because this is the self same Cezanne that got rejected by the art critics at the beginning of his life. Yeah, this is the painting that I think this is the one that I'm referring to. Can you see this painting?
Yes.
Would you sell it for?
Yes.
Would you buy it for 500 riyals?
No.
No.
Not even 5 years.
I think everyone everyone can
Only the rich people,
like
only the
Yeah,
rich people who are interested with the paints and art, they will buy it, of course.
but yeah, not at the exaggerated number that I mentioned before,
but,
60
but,
million
but
something,
yeah,
right?
but the number, the price is very high. يعني.
Yeah, what I'm trying to say is, and I'm giving you what I'm referring to here is the irony. You have somebody who got rejected a number of times by the Salon at the start of his life. Not at the start of, actually, it took him years. And now his paintings are sold at, astronomical figures. And this happens to be one. When you look at the quality of the painting, when you look for artistic value, you may not agree, right? Again,
Doctor,
it's, yes.
in that time it was في كان غسيل أموال.
No, 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 because no, people didn't have as much money as we have now. No, no, certainly there wasn't. So let me just clarify something. It wasn't sold for 60 million in the 19th century. It was sold in 19 something, 1999. So money laundering is now. But this is not the point. You're missing the point. I'm just referring to the fact that he started off very poorly received, but over time, because of perhaps his diligence, because of his principles, because of the fact that he insisted to have his own way of painting, that rules started to bend for him. It's not him who bowed to the pressures of the Salon. No, the Salon over time is the one who, the members of the Salon were the one who embraced him later and accepted him and recognized him. Anyway,
Doctor,
yes.
maybe the Salon accepted him because he succeeded outside it.
Yeah, it's the climate of ideas, if you ask me. It's the fact that when he applied for a place within the Salon, it was a time, and when they started to change their guidelines and their criteria, it was another time. So actually, they were reacting in a positive way to whatever was changing in society. And obviously, Cezanne was lucky because he was part of the revolution, the artistic revolution, and he was a representation of that. That's why he got embraced and he got accepted. Again, Cezanne was born in the south of France, and the south of France happens to be, of course, the countryside where you have very beautiful scenery, you have villages, and you have lakes. It's a country of the mind, if you like. It's a green world where you are hit with very fresh sensations. You have birds all over the place. You have lakes and water, and that would for sure have had affected Cezanne, and that perhaps had enhanced his artistic sensibilities. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been the Cezanne that we know. Again, part of the fame and the reputation that we have of Cezanne was the fact is the fact that his paintings, especially the landscape ones among them, are very beautiful, are very pure, and they communicate very fresh, you know, um, stuff. Again, that would be credited to where he was born. He was born in the south of France, as I said, where villages are, where the countryside is, where there is freshness, and you're away from the hustle and bustle of city life. Again, his father was a well-off, self-made individual, and he wanted him to become, I think, a lawyer. And Cezanne, like everybody else, he would relent for some time. He would go to law school and perhaps stay there for 2 years, but he would realize that he was not cut to be a lawyer, so he would relinquish and give up law and pursue his passion. Like I told you, he lives in a village in the south of France, and obviously away from the limelight, away from the lights of Paris, the capital. Normally, the capital has monopoly over everything, over fame, over jobs, and over a lot of other things. So, in order to make it big, you have to try your luck in the capital. You have to go all the way to the capital if you happen to be from the south. And this is exactly what Paul Cezanne did. He left the south of France in order to go to Paris, in order to, like I said, try his luck as a painter. And in doing that, he was following the advice of another talent, a literary talent by the name of Emile Zola. Emile Zola is a very famous French novelist and writer. And he also happens to be from the south. And he was obviously friends with Paul Cezanne. He went to Paris 2 years earlier, I mean, 2 years before Cezanne did that. And they started to exchange letters. And Emile Zola would encourage Paul Cezanne to go over to Paris in order to get the recognition that Emile Zola thinks Paul Cezanne deserves. And this is exactly what Paul Cezanne did. He went all the way to Paris and he met with Emile Zola. And typical when you're young, when you come from a very far away place and you try to apply perhaps for jobs, you apply for things and you get rejected, you get refused. Sometimes you lose hope. Sometimes you feel down and you feel disappointed. And in this case, you would need people to, good people who would tell you, this is not the end of the world. You're doing a good job. Just exercise and show some patience, and things will turn out the way you want. And this is exactly what Zola told Cezanne. You shouldn't be dismayed. You shouldn't lose hope. You're a great talent. If you get rejected by the salon, once, it's not the end of the world, and then all these very nice things. So Zola believed in Cezanne before everybody knew about Cezanne. At one point, he would say, and I'm quoting Zola, he would say that there are two men inside the artist, the poet and the worker. One is born a poet, one becomes a worker. And you who have the spark, who possess what cannot be acquired, you complain. You complain when all you have to do to succeed is exercise your fingers, become a worker. Again, he's obviously talking to Cezanne. He's trying to get him out of the despair that he fell into, and he was telling him, "You are a poet. You have what it takes. You're a poet, and this is a talent. This is a blessing that you don't realize. And all you need to do is to, first of all, believe yourself in yourself. And when you believe in yourself, you turn from a poet to a worker. Obviously, you need to be both. I mean, by worker here, it means that you have to work hard. It wouldn't be enough to just be a poet. It wouldn't be enough to only have a talent. You also have to enhance the talent. You also have to work on your skills so that people accept you. But to lament your luck and say, no, I cannot make it, and you start losing hope. This is what Zola is warning Cezanne against. He's saying, no, you are a great talent, make no mistake about it. You have the spark. You have something that uh, cannot be acquired. There is obviously a difference between a talent and a skill. A talent is from God, is a gift from God. Okay, while a skill is something that you develop and that you can acquire. He's telling him that you have what other people do not have, no matter how hard they try, which is the spark of the talent. Okay, all you need to do is to work hard, so you would have the talent and you would have the hard work that would allow you to exercise your talent, and you become famous over time, famous and recognized. Uh, so again, so true artists are born with the spark of imagination and have only to exercise their fingers. So again, he's telling him, and this is perhaps very pragmatic and very practical on the part of Zola. He would tell him that it wouldn't be enough to write if you're a writer, or to paint if you're a painter, in your natural way. So you were born with this talent and you paint based on this talent. No, you need to also receive some technical training. You need to also see how people paint, and you gear your talent towards how people paint. You're not born, and you don't live in a desert. You live in a place where there are obviously a great deal of people who paint, and they form schools. So you need to choose a school of painting, and you need to train so that your painting can be similar to that. So, yes.
No sound.
Are you sure? Does this apply to everyone? Can't you hear me, everyone?
We
We
can.
can hear
Yes,
you.
we hear you.
طيب, I think she will have to perhaps go out and come back again. we're talking about Zola, and we're talking about those nuggets of wisdom that he is communicating to his younger friend Cezanne. Again, would Cezanne listen to what Zola is saying? When you look at the history and the biography of Cezanne, you would realize that Cezanne didn't get he insisted on painting in his own unique way. And this is perhaps one reason why we're talking about him today. If he listened to what Zola said about developing technical, skills, he would have painted like everybody else, and he wouldn't have distinguished himself.
Be special.
Yes, yeah, yes. Cezanne has always been known as having issues with the technique. The fact that the techniques that were prevailing at the time were not to his taste. Again, whether they were not to his taste or whether he thinks that they are limiting and restricting enough, that is another issue. But what we know for a fact was the fact that he had problems with technique. People say that he paints very beautifully, but he has issues with technique, with the control, whether the strokes of the brush and stuff like that. Again, by technique, we of course refer to procedures for performing an operation that tend to require practice and that improve with practice. So it's, again, you need practice and more practice, and that would help eventually. Again, if you believe in the importance of practice, if you believe that practicing in a certain way would be what you want. Obviously, as we know, Cezanne was different. So he would have issues, or according to at least the salon, he would have problems with mixing and interrelating colors and all these kinds of things. Again, here we have a reference to the salon, the annual salon, and the guidelines. Again, like I said, in order to get recognized as a painter, you have to go through the salon. You have to attend the salon. You have to display and show your paintings there. Again, in order to to be in the salon every year, you have to give them samples of your painting, and they would check whether they follow the rules or not. So obviously, and for so many years, Cezanne's paintings would not, show that he was following the rules. And in this case, every time he, applies, he would say, no, sorry, we cannot accept you because you're not following our guidelines. Again, so what happens if you don't accept it you get accepted in the saloon? Again, if you fail,
To give them samples.
if you fail, if you give them samples, man, they think that the samples are not consistent with their guidelines, do not follow their guidelines, they will say, no, sorry, you're not accepted. So what is the impact of this refusal? If they refuse you, if they reject you, so you would have little prospect of establishing any kind of career. So people wouldn't be interested in your work. And in this case, you would be advised to think of another career or another profession. Again, he started to apply to the salon since 1863. Okay, and it wasn't until 1882 that he got accepted in the salon. Can you see how long that is? 1863 to 1882. This was like a 16 or 17 years if you put them together. So it's a long time, in other words. Again, so every time he tries, he gets rejected. So what is he going to do? Did he decide to leave painting behind and think of another job? No, he didn't. So what did he do? Remember, I told you that there were also other rejectees, silent rejectees, other people who got rejected. They came together and they formed what we now call the School of Impressionism, or the School of Impressionists. Okay, and those were also artistic talents, but they also have their own way of painting. So this was an independent group of artists who banded together to share the experiences of showing their work outside the salon. They wanted to show their work, but of course the salon was shut against them because of how different they were. Again, the Impressionists are going to become very famous, and they would be also, a landmark in the history of French and European painting. So who are they? I mean, when we talk about the Impressionists, of course, we talk about Cezanne, we talk about Claude Monet, we talk about Camille Pissarro, we talk about Auguste Renoir, we talk about Maurice Shaw, we talk about Alfred Sisley, and Edgar Degas. These are all very famous Impressionists. I would like you to look at this painting. This is also by Paul Cezanne. Look at it. And when you look at this at Cezanne, you need to look at, if you're into the history of painting, you would realize that, again, Cezanne is different in the sense that you don't have details. You don't, I mean, the painting is normally very far away in terms, you don't have a close-up. Or do we call it a close-up? When you have a file and you close in, right? And then you close out, right? When you close in, things becomes bigger or become bigger, and you are as close as it gets to the details of the picture. With Cezanne, you don't have that. You normally have a distance between you and the painting. And one interpretation of that would be the fact that he does not want you to feel one with the picture. He does not want you, or he wants you, or he wants, I mean, he wants you to create the illusion that what is in front of you is life. He says, no, this is not life. This is a reproduction of life. But to take it as life, as reality, this is not what I want. This is deception. He's saying that painters and also, literature people are double crossing the readers and those who watch these paintings. Again, he wants us, I mean, he's very realistic. This is called realism. And he is a realist painter who believes that art is art and life is life. Okay? If you paint something and you tell me that this is life, You should be so immersed in the painting that you think that you're perhaps one of its people. This is not correct. This is deception. Are you getting the idea? And this is again, this was new at the time. Again, let's look at the critical, not critical, the artistic reception. Critical, by critical reception, I mean, of course, the reception of the critics. How did they look on and at Cezanne? Were they appreciative of what he was painting? No, obviously, no. At the beginning, people would say, or critics would say bad stuff about him. They would accuse him of lack of artistic techniques, the fact that um, he wasn't a good painter, to say the least. This is what they said. They even held him in ridicule. When you mock somebody, when you mock and when you mock the talent of somebody and say, no, you're not good enough. Yeah, perhaps think of something else. And this is what we had. We had, for the most part, people who would say very bad stuff about him. And of course, you would have a minority that would see promise in what he is doing and would say, listen, if you wait, this guy is going to make it big as a great talent. So published reviews of the exhibition. He had an exhibition, and the reviews that were published in newspapers and magazines were for the varied from moderate support to scathing dismissal. So they dismissed him, they disapproved of him altogether. A reviewer signing himself as Jean Prouvaire was one of several who singled Cezanne out for particular ridicule. He used to mock and make fun of Cezanne, his talent. He would say, and this is a quotation, shall we mention Cezanne, who, by the way, has his own legend? No known jury has ever even imagined the possibility of accepting a single work by this painter, who came to the salon carrying his paintings on his back like Jesus Christ carrying his cross. When you look at what this guy is saying, it's full of sarcasm, it's full of mocking, and he's saying that not a single one of his paintings got accepted by the salon, which is a mark of failure, according to Prouvaire. Again, it wasn't all sad and bad and dark. There was another critic by the name of George Revere, and this George Revere would compare Cezanne's work to some of the most prestigious works from the classical canon. He would say that Cezanne's works are those of a Greek of the classical period. Of course, the classical, if you compare somebody to the Greeks and classical painting in the Greek period, it means that you are actually thinking very highly of him. He is saying that Cezanne is a painter and a great painter. So you see the extremes were moving from somebody who is saying that he is very bad to another guy who believes that Cezanne is a great person. And this guy is also saying that Cezanne has enormous skill. Cezanne, of course, would try his hand with all the artistic genres, the different types of painting or art. He would paint landscape, he would paint portraiture, he would paint still life, scenes from everyday life, bathers, which was an established genre at the time. So, like I said, he would also paint history paintings. He left no subject matter unattempted. He tried his hand with all of them, and like I said, he would have his own twisted and unique way of painting in these different genres. He wouldn't imitate other people as is. Otherwise, we wouldn't have had him today. So there is no correct response to pictures. This is very important when it comes to Cezanne and any other painter for that matter. People have different tastes, and whatever I think is not up to the standard, somebody else may come forward and say, no, it's to my liking, I like it very much. Again, we're focusing here on a genre that was all over the place at the time, which is the bathers. Bathers means you would have a number of people in a lake or in a river, and they are, of course, bathing. Um, and this is typical European. This is perhaps typical Italian. And you would have the inspiration of these kinds of painting would be Greek mythology. Of course, you know what mythology is, this body of work where you have gods and goddesses, you have mythical figures, you have nymphs, and you would have very creatures that you don't normally meet every day, right? Angels, white as they are, and they have wings, unicorns. So this is all mythological. And part of the bathers as a genre was based on Greek mythology. Again, a typical bather figure would be Venus or Aphrodite. Aphrodite happens to be the goddess of love and romance and beauty in ancient Greek mythology. Again, this would be inspiration for generations of European artists, and of course, Cezanne would be one of them. Again, would Cezanne paint in the tradition? Yes, he would paint, within the traditions of bathers, but again, he would have his own way of doing that. Again, this is the history of bathers and how they they started off in ancient Greece and then the Roman period, and then of course, we would have a stop in the Middle Ages, because the Middle Ages were religious periods where the church was all over the place, was in full control, and you wouldn't have bathers because obviously bathers, as the title suggests, would have women bathing in the river, and this is of course against the religious sensibilities of people in the Middle Ages. So you would have a hold or a freeze on bathers as a genre in the Middle Ages, and then after the Middle Ages in the Renaissance, you would have a revival of interest in the bathers. It would start in Italy, and then it would develop through the ages until it reaches the 19th century. Again, it's an established genre, artistic genre, and of course, Cezanne would try his hand with it. Again, he would have his own way of using bathers as a genre and as a technique. Again, why would Cezanne, who is the byproduct of the 19th century, why would he go all the way to the Italian Renaissance, and even prior to Greek mythology in order to paint in their tradition? Of course, he would do that because these are genres that are very familiar among people. So if you paint within the tradition, people would recognize you. Okay, but obviously with Cezanne, it doesn't stop there. He would paint within the tradition, but he would tweak it to, kind of serve his own purposes and to serve his own taste. Remember that he has his own way of doing things. So Cezanne's bathers occupies a virtually unequaled position in the history of art, as this is represented at the National Collection. So again, people realized how different Cezanne is when he introduced his own bathers. Okay, so his paintings, especially when it comes to the bathers, were considered as avant-garde. Avant-garde artist or avant-garde art means that you are quite ahead of time, that you are ahead of the competition. You are pioneering and championing new ideas, which what Cezanne was all about. Again, when we talk about Cezanne as being an avant-garde, when we talk about his art as avant-garde, ahead of his time, we would talk about other people who are or who were as avant-garde. We would talk about Pablo Picasso in the 20th century. We would talk about Henri Matisse and others. Do you have any questions?
Doctor, everything is no, doctor.
Okay, interesting. Again, there is going to be a great deal of proof about Cezanne and his talent and what he represents and what he stands for. And the argument would go that we now have two traditions. We have modern traditions and we do have the old tradition. Of course, we're referring to modern tradition because it's now a tradition in its own right. When it started, it wasn't. So you have now two poles. You now have two different schools. You have the old school and you have the modern school. And of course, Cezanne would represent the modern school, and he would be somebody. Can you kindly mute your mic? Somebody mute your mic لو سمحت or سمحتي for that matter. يا بشاير. I hate to mute people, يا جماعة. I think it's bad to mute people. People should be self-regulated enough not to allow me to mute. I hate it. Anyway, so we're talking about the arguments that Cezanne and others started due to how different they were in painting. And like I said, Cezanne and others would represent what we now call modern painting and modernism, while people before the 19th century would represent tradition, the traditional way of painting. Again, there is going to be a great deal of conflict. Typical. And Cezanne and those who were avant-garde, those who were ahead of their time in terms of techniques and in terms of themes and ideas, they would come out of this battle of wills, artistic wills, if you like, triumphant and victorious. And the people now talk about Cezanne and his accomplishments. And again, go back to the painting that was sold at 60 million, and you would realize how he came a long way. Again, you would also kind of reflect back on how maligned and misjudged over the years Cezanne was. I mean, compare how he was treated and how he has become. There is obviously a big gap. Now, I mean, people refer to Cezanne, which is funny and ironic. Now they say that Cezanne, as a painter, is the Christopher Columbus of a new continent of form. Can you imagine? Of course, you know who Christopher Columbus is.
Of course.
Yeah. So people normally credit Christopher Columbus for, discovering America, right? So Cezanne is now the Christopher Columbus of art. I mean, he also discovered a new continent, but this continent is not America. It's a new art form. Can you see how he came a long way? And they say that he has inspired a whole generation and a whole age. And these are ideas, and these are, kind of terms. Delineation, modeling, and shading. I'm sure you can. I would like you to perhaps look them up. They not only mean what they mean in front of us. We know what delineation when you portray something, but obviously there is more to delineation than the layman definition that I'm giving. So I would like you to give it some thought on your own. Look it up in artistic dictionaries, because the meaning would be more focused and even clearer. Obviously, the word tone here would mean differently than what we know of tone. Tone here does not refer to sound. In normal circumstances, you would talk about sound, but here, of course, it means something that has to do with the character of the painter and how this comes through in a painting. Again, that would take us to picture plane and composition, the surface or the literal surface of the canvas, the brushwork and brush strokes and stuff like that. And then we move to the big idea, which is tradition and modernity. And of course, by tradition, we would talk about the period prior to Cezanne, the period prior to the 19th century. and modernity would be Cezanne and after. And of course, there is going to be a great deal of difference. And if we don't have any difference, we wouldn't. We would have called them, the two of them, tradition. Why would I have modernity if it's not the opposite of tradition? So modernity would have associations that has to do with rejection of old forms and old styles, revolutionizing the whole way of doing, of painting or even writing. Well, tradition would mean sticking to the old way or ways of doing things, whether we talk about painting or we talk about literature and writing. And of course, the two will be pitted against each other, and we will have people who are, kind of adding new dimensions to the art experience. And one of them, of course, happens to be Cezanne. So how are we going to pit them against each other in order to get a clearer picture of what used to happen? We will have Cezanne on the one hand and another painter, and this another painter would represent the traditional school of painting, while Cezanne would represent modernity. And we'll look at some of their poems, some of their paintings, and see how different they are. I will leave that to next time because it's we have a lot to say about this part. And I'll stop on this note and with this item. And I'll give you 2 minutes for questions if you have any.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you, Doctor. Doctor, I want to ask about what's the difference between the new, the modern, and the old art or band.
So this is going to be, Mona, this is what we're going to talk about in detail next time, inshallah.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Excuse me.
Yes. Yeah, of course. Yeah, go ahead.
I have a question and a comment. I will not take your time.
It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. Go ahead.
My question is about Impressionism. Impressionism, I think, correct me if I am wrong. Now I'm thinking about the meaning. Maybe Impressionism gives the viewers or the people just impressions that they are looking at a picture. It's not reflect the real life, but it just gives them maybe just
a taste of life or a smell of life, if you like. It doesn't give you an exact copy or an exact replica of life.
But they did that intentionally. They want to give the viewer this impression.
Yes,
and
yes.
This is why we call it Impressionism.
Yeah, that this is partly true. I'm not an art critic, but I promise you I would read more about that, and perhaps we can discuss it next time at length. But my understanding is that impressions Impressionism is all about recording impressions about life. It's not about recording things wholesale or things on a large scale. You don't record details. You give your impression about things, and that impression would differ obviously from one person to another. Remember, this was the time of when everything was relative. We're talking about a time where things are heading towards relativity in everything. So my understanding and my appreciation of something would differ from your appreciation and the way you look at things. In this, again, the impressions that I'm trying to communicate to you as a painter may not even hold true with you. You may have your own impressions about the self same painting that we are all looking at.
Because I think when the painter uh, يعني draws or paints
Mhm.
accurate 100%, it's not will be something interesting. It will be looks like a camera or taking a footage or something like that.
Absolutely, yes. This is actually what Cezanne was against, the idea of reproducing reality as is. Okay.
Exactly.
Yes. Yeah, he was against that, and this was, by the way, the trend. This was the style that was prevalent in the
Mm.
18th century before Cezanne came to the scene and revolutionized everything.
And this maybe this is the reason for those people who refused him, because his portrait or his paintings are not 100% accurate.
Yes, yes, that's they. Yeah, I mean, I used to teach a course, and this was on 18th century poetry, and there was this reference to the fact that the poet, like the painter, is holding a mirror to nature. So if
Mm.
you're holding a mirror, everything is reflected on the mirror as is, right? So
Exactly.
if everything is reflected on the mirror as is, why don't I go to reality itself? So
Exactly.
why would I need an intermediary, somebody in the middle, when I can go to nature itself,
Exactly.
right?
Uh, my comments,
Yes.
if
Yeah, go
you
ahead.
allow me. When
Yeah.
I was a young and in the elementary school, we have we had restrictions from our
Mm.
teacher. Don't
Yes.
paint or don't draw human beings. This is the first the first one.
Yes.
Human
Yes.
beings are and painting human beings is
Mm.
forbidden, because this
Mm.
is our religious beliefs. And
Mm.
I remember that time we had an Egyptian teacher who
Mm.
uh, who went into a fight with the school manager, school teacher.
Uh-huh. Yes.
He said, "Let them draw and paint what they want." They told him, "No, this is forbidden." And the second
Mm.
one, the second rule or the second law is uh, also animals or
Mm.
fish, birds,
Mm.
anything has soul
Yeah.
beside the human beings. But now I think يعني we are live in different style. يعني. I think the case who Paul Season had faced, we have already faced here, but with different style يعني, or different scope يعني.
Yeah, yeah, that's correct. Yeah, I mean, I'm not a religious scholar, of course, and I'm not going to go into details about whether what I mean. Yeah, you'll have to eventually honor and respect what are the views of others, as far as yeah, as long as they respect yours. It's I mean, interpretation, and like we agreed, interpretation is up for grabs. You have your own way of looking at things. And of course, you have this golden religious Islamic rule. I mean, استفتي قلبك, right? I think if you consult your heart, you wouldn't find issues with. I mean, it depends on your intentions. I would leave it there. It depends on
I
how you look at things.
excuse
Um,
me. The idea was
mm,
about we don't have the right to imitate what God created.
uh,
Don't imitate him. But
yeah,
this will be applied on everything around us, not just
yeah,
human beings and animals and fish.
yes, yeah. Otherwise, yeah, but these are, يعني, everything is, like you're saying, Dr. Ahmed, is the creation of God, right? But again, it depends on what your purposes are. It's about appreciation and the appreciation of the arts. It's about looking at something pure. It's about also marveling at the beauty of life and all these kinds of things. We'll leave it there, and perhaps we can talk more about it in future classes. I have time for one final question or comment for that matter.
Yeah, please.
Yes.
The 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 thing